Hello, this is Scott McDonald, and welcome to the Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast. Today we are going to be discussing how far is too far. In part 2, we are going to be discussing factors that influence your dentist commute. Now let's start with aspects of commuting that are undeniable. They are the few factors that are determining how far dentists are willing to travel to their office that may prove to have an impact upon what dentists consider a reasonable location. Once again, the perfect place to practice, right? Now, beyond the obvious benefits of more efficient use of time, there are other factors to consider. Number one, gas prices. It's a fact that the U.S., we love our private vehicles. This is especially true of healthcare professionals. This is in spite of the ubiquitous public relations regarding light rail and other forms of mass public transportation, making more travel efficient. People, especially professionals like dentists, don't want to depend upon public transportation on options that these actually reduce your independence and freedom. This runs counter to community bureaucracies. As city planners are reluctant to report, but it's entirely undeniable, ridership on public transportation is becoming less desirable, and the number of rides reflects this. The number of people who are taking the public transportation as an option is low and declining quickly. This is true when gas prices are high, but at present the availability and price of gasoline is pretty low. This puts these planners in a bind. They don't really want to put money into roads, which could make travel by private vehicle more desirable, but potentially more polluting. Cities and states are pouring more money into rail and dedicated bus lines than ever before. The effect is to make commutes by doctors longer and more expensive. Now, putting aside the debates about the societal and evolutionary benefits of things that make up private transportation, it appears that public policy is running counter to the needs of a professional with a long commute. 2, family imperatives. And this, frankly, is going to be a little politically incorrect. But the data supports this theory. The number and percentage of female dentists has risen dramatically in the last 20 years. By some calculations, women make up more than half of dental school classes. These soon-to-be doctors have the same stresses of all dentists, with the additional burden of being a mom. Now, according to their challenge of site selection, the trend for doctors to marry other professionals is growing. It's a complication of the issue that we'll consider in practice in another video. This trend was predicted in the bell curve. Now, finding an acceptable place to live and to work for two adds to the complications of commute times. Raising a family means that acceptable sites for practice will be best if long commutes are eliminated. Long commutes to their office is merely reinforcing the trends of keeping the commute as short as possible. Parents seem to have much more involvement with their children's lives than ever before, which adds more complication, and this encourages dentists to stay closer to home, particularly when they have children who are 10 years of age and younger. Considering time on the road, commuting is a complication many professionals would rather do without. We can see a return to the old model of a residence attached to an office building, especially in rural locations, as a preferable option. The new lifestyle centers, which combine residence, retail outlets, and office space, will make this option in more densely populated suburban areas a more reasonable option. In short, finding a place that combines a desirable lifestyle, including office space, is kind of difficult. And all of this is especially applicable for female dentists who are trying to balance their professional lives and personal lives. It may not be a subject that welcomes frank discussions, but it is undeniable that the locations that are acceptable for dads may not work as well for moms. From our anecdotal research, the placement of a practice relative to home is becoming increasingly difficult for both genders. All dentists already know that they may have to travel between different offices. that they are operating, with the additional complications of having to go back and forth between home and school and other errands that are personal in order to continue their lives. The places of particular stress upon professionals as they navigate their life and work relationships is growing. 3, special complications of urban, rural, and suburban lifestyles. Now, let me state again that every city and neighborhood is different. Each of them will have a different sense of what is reasonable in terms of how far one should travel to a dental office. As a general rule, urban residents who live and work in a densely populated area want everything nearby. Rural residents accept practices that are farther away, but now there are exceptions. Now, when I moved to Manhattan, I was surprised to learn that there really is not a single big city called New York. It's actually many distinct neighborhoods crammed together, each with its own demographics and psychographic character. If you're in Brooklyn, it matters what part of Brooklyn that you are in and where you base your practice. The same is true in Los Angeles. Which side of the I-405 are you on will greatly influence your patient base. Each part of the city has a culture to attract and retain a patient base. The professional has always been wise to maintain an association with a local institution or institutions like high schools and churches, as well as large employers. This is true in an urban setting as in any other location. Suburban patients are becoming more local-centric than they have ever been before. Actually, what they really want is something that they consider to be convenient to where they shop and work and have entertainment. Because the places that rural patients, those who are living in low-populated areas, are using to travel, they may consider a greater distance to a dentist will be acceptable on the condition that it is near the other places that they need to travel. A dental practice is rarely sufficient as a destination by itself. Now, you put it close to a pharmacy, hardware store, bank, supermarket, these rural residents will still consider it within a reasonable distance. You can't put it out there by itself. It really helps to know the psychographics, however, of the population to determine whether they will consider a practice reasonably close to be considered convenient. But it's definitely a sliding scale. 4, the new local is being used to consider how far away the same place that might have been good before has to be reconsidered now. And that's because there is a new and emergent definition of what local means. And all of this is reinforced by the trend we noted in patient distribution. As an example, fee-for-service patients especially prefer to know their professional and to be known by them. That requires a new orientation to the relationship they enjoy with their dentist. Many corporate practices are even waking up to this reality. We're local. That's what they say. When the dentist focuses more locally, effective marketing and goodwill are reinforced as well as enhanced. Now, this is an enhanced incentive to want to focus both work and residence in a more local area. The patient is comfortable with the doc-in-the-box practice. They don't necessarily care about knowing the professional. They often want inexpensive dentistry that they can finance easily. Then again, their expectations for the length of time that they'll stay with a particular practice tends to be shorter under these circumstances. It's often determined by how long it will take to treat their problem and get them out of pain. Nevertheless, Americans, as they become frankly, a little more burdened, let's say, by the length of their own commutes, what they consider convenient is more a matter of consideration than it's ever been before. Now, in our next episode, we're going to be discussing the cities and the regions of the U.S. that have the longest and the shortest commutes. No, I'm not suggesting that you move to these areas. Rather, I want you to consider these as an illustration of what types of locations are showing positive and negative commute trends. These are places that have a commute model that should be considered by dentists in the future. This is Scott McDonald of DrDemographics.com. Thanks so much for watching. Please catch us online, and we are archiving all of these video podcasts and our audio podcasts. We hope to be able to help you in the future. And thanks so much for watching.